It's easy with a God that loves us so much. It's easy with a God that loves us unconditionally. It's easy to take him for granted. To forget that each moment exists because he chooses to pour himself out. Exists because he desires to empty himself on our behalf. It's easy to forget that every single morning that I step out of bed, I'm stepping out of a time in which God helped me survive without my knowing, without my volition. For as I slept, he kept my heart beating. As I slept, he kept my lungs expanding. As I slept, he held me. And then I wake up in the morning and I step into a flood of his grace. I walk through most of the day without even expressing an element of gratitude or acknowledging the gift of the present moment, without so much as tipping my hat. This isn't meant to be a guilt-ridden thing. This is meant for me to open my eyes up to realize that in every single moment, that at every single step, we are filled with the pregnant presence of our God, giving himself to us. It's not like the cross was the only time when he offered himself to us, the only time that he emptied himself or poured himself out on behalf of us. For in the beginning, God emptied himself for us, longing to connect us with others, to connect us with him, to connect us with creation, the community that is found only in the Trinity. He didn't just create us, he sustains creation by his being, by him constantly pouring himself out for us. And I was convicted this morning that at least deserves a thank you. The text that I was convicted by was Luke chapter 17, verses 11 through 19. It says, on Jesus' way to Jerusalem, he traveled along the border between Samaria and Galilee. This border that separated two warring people. The Samaritans were considered half-Jews or muddled blood, having intermarried with the Assyrians during their exile. And the Galileans were considered the Jews away from Jerusalem that were hyper-kosher. Jesus is walking on this border, not just between two lands, but between two people groups that did not enjoy each other, that despised each other with a religious fervor. Verse 12. As he was going into a village, 10 men who had leprosy met him. They stood at a distance. I don't know if you heard it, but that's actually an act of grace. You see, lepers had a disease that was not understood. What was understood was that it would spread very quickly, at times wondering if it's even embedding into the very fabric of the buildings that they graced. And so lepers were pushed outside of the community. They were set on the outside in order to make sure that this disease didn't continue to spread, didn't hurt more people, didn't destroy more communities. The lepers were physically unclean, as well as spiritually. Because as they are set outside of the community, they are no longer allowed to worship. They are no longer allowed to live with their families. They are no longer allowed to provide for their kinsmen. The lepers were required to stand at a distance. And even though they saw Jesus, even though they saw their hope of restoration, they did him the good grace of standing at a distance, only speaking to him from afar. Verse 13, and they called out in a loud voice, Jesus, Master, have pity on us. We have heard what you have done to so many. Through the blessing of your touch, through the warmth of your embrace, Jesus, have pity on us too. When he saw them, he said, go show yourselves to the priest. This was a gamble. He didn't say, you are clean, you are healed, now go. He says, go show yourselves to the priest, which that was an important step. Because if a leper was truly cured of their disease, showing themselves to the priest was a way to be inspected so that they could be once again a part of the community. The lepers then had to begin the walk in faith. They had to begin the walk without knowing if along the walk they will be healed. All they are told is to go and show themselves to the priest. And I love the next line. And as they went, they obeyed first. And as they went, they were cleansed. They were healed. Able to be reintegrated into God's community. Verse 15, though, adds an interesting twist to the story. One of them, there were 10, but one of them, when he saw he was healed, he came back, praising God in a loud voice. He threw himself at Jesus' feet and thanked him. And then Luke throws in this detail. And he was a Samaritan. A detail that's very strange, because it is the kosher Jew who is disciplined in the special revelation of God's Old Testament that should have known who Jesus was, that should have known the power that came through this Son, that should have known the Creator when the creation was staring into his face. And yet the Samaritan, who was cast outside of the community, who was not considered to be even theologically correct, is the only one that saw Jesus for who he was, one worthy of a thank you. Jesus asked, were not all 10 cleansed? Where are the other 9? No one has returned to give praise to God except for this foreigner. Then he said to him, rise and go, your faith has made you well. One of the things that sticks out to me from this passage is this. The healing was not dependent upon the gratitude. It's not as if Jesus took back the healing of the other 9. But the healing restored something deeper that leprosy cannot penetrate. The healing is ultimately completed with a thank you. Here's my challenge for you this week. Don't take God for granted. Don't walk throughout the day with all of your graces, forgetting to simply look at a King that loves us and takes care of us even before we say thank you. But offer your heart to him of gratitude, for each day is truly a gift. I love you guys. Have a good week.